Well, good morning. I have a few mystical musings on the Hebrew word Hakhel, which means a symbol. So let's see if I can share my screen here. And there we are. Okay, so this little slideshow is titled Some Mystical Musings on the Word Hakhel, a Symbol. And down here, I took this little picture, which originally said Avengers, a symbol, and changed it to Avengers Hakhel. All right. Now, the Hebrew word He Kuf He Lamed, when pronounced as Hakhel, means a symbol or an assembly. And when pronounced as Hikahel, it means to assemble. In particular, we're told in Deuteronomy to assemble the people once every 7 years in order to listen to the reading of the Torah. And in Deuteronomy 31:10 through 12, it says, "And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, and the time of the year of release, in the feast of booths, when all Israel has come to appear before the Lord your God, in the place which he shall choose, you shall read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people together, men and women and children, and your stranger who is inside your gates, that they may hear and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and may take care to do all the words of this Torah." However, the word Hakhel or Hikahel has some deeper connotations in Ecclesiastes and in the Sefer Yensura, the ancient book of creation. In the first verse of Ecclesiastes, Solomon is referred to as Kohelet. In Ecclesiastes Rabbah, the rabbis explained this name as follows. Why was Kohelet's name so called? Because his words were uttered in public. Hikahel, as it is stated, then Solomon assembled Yachel, the elders of Israel, from Ecclesiastes Rabbah 1:2. So, this name Kohelet is seen as being related to the words Hakhel and Hikahel for a symbol and to a symbol. Also, in Song of Songs Rabbah, it also says this, and more so because Kohelet was wise, Ecclesiastes 12:9. He also taught the people knowledge. Yea, he pondered and sought out and set in order many proverbs. He pondered the words of the Torah, and investigated the meaning of the words of the Torah. And then I've underlined this part. He made handles to the Torah. Okay, from these two excerpts from Midrash, we might draw two conclusions as to why Solomon was called Kohelet. First, he spoke to assemblies of people, and second, he assembled the teachings in such a way that the people could readily understand them. And interestingly, when it says that Kohelet made handles to the Torah, we actually use that same sort of metaphor to this very day. In other words, when a person has a good understanding of some topic, we say things like, he has a handle on it, or that he grasps it. Okay. However, we can find even deeper meaning to this word Hakhel, Hikahel, by examining another verse from Ecclesiastes that has a word that has been translated in several different ways. And I've put some of the different translations I've seen down in here. Okay, from Ecclesiastes. Let's see, do I have it spelled right? I don't think so. There we go. From Ecclesiastes 3:11, we read, he has made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set a world, eternity, mystery in their heart, so that no man can find out the work which God has made from the beginning to the end. Okay, and it's clearly this part here, which has sort of a dubious meaning, can be translated in various ways. Now, the word they're having trouble translating is olam. And the word olam in this verse is often translated as either world or eternal. and consequently, it seems to have an association today to what we might call space-time. However, olam is usually spelled Ayin Vav Lamed Mem, but in this verse is spelled Ayin Lamed Mem without the letter Vav. This changes it into the word, I've tried to do a phonetic spelling here, the word Elaine, which means to hide or conceal. Okay? And that's where this translation mystery comes from. In other Tanakhs, I've seen it translated as an enigma in their heart. Something hidden, something concealed. However, we can go further with this. In this verse from Ecclesiastes, the numerical value, or gematria, of Ayin Lamed Mem is 70 plus 30 plus 40 equal 140. But this is also the numerical value of the word Hakhel or Hikahel to a symbol. Okay? Since Hey Kuf Hey Lamed is equal to 5 plus 100 plus 5 plus 30 equal 140. Hence, putting all this together, we might say that something has been placed in our hearts that assembles our perception of space and time for us, while simultaneously concealing a deeper reality. Okay, I'm going to try and correct some of these misspelled words as I go through. Why misspell a word just once when you can misspell it several times? All right. But we can ask ourselves, whoops, let me get back there. We can ask ourselves, what gets concealed? Well, the Zohar refers to this world of ours as the world of separation, right? At the very beginning in Genesis, God is separating heaven from earth, land from waters, light from dark. Hence, we conclude from this, we might conclude that what our perception of reality conceals from us is the world of oneness. Okay. Additionally, we might think of what has been placed within our hearts as being the Torah or instructions. That's what the word Torah actually means, instructions. We can think of what's been placed within our hearts as being the Torah or instructions for assembling the world that we see. Furthermore, the Torah begins with the letter Bet and ends with the letter Lamed, and Lamed Bet spells heart. Thus, the Torah is literally contained within heart. Also, the letter Bet represents the number 2, which means that Lamed Bet can also be read as 2 Lameds. And if we put 2 Lameds together, then they can form a heart. So here on the right is one letter Lamed as it's usually written. And on the left, I've taken that same letter and just sort of flipped it, reflected it about a vertical axis. And when you put those 2 laments together, they create a nice image of a heart. And that is just so cool. And here are a couple of verses that refer to the Torah being within our heart. But the word, in other words, Torah, is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Deuteronomy 30:14. And from Psalm 40, verse 9, we have, "Oh my God, your Torah is in my heart." Okay, now let's see what this all has to do with the Sefer Yensura, the oldest extant book of Jewish mysticism. The title of the book is often translated as Book of Creation, but you will also see it sometimes referred to instead as the Book of Formation. This is because the word Yensura comes from the word Yatsar, meaning to shape or form. And just as a potter forms a pot from the already existing clay, so does Yatsar refer to something from something creation. In other words, forming could also be construed as assembling. You're assembling the pieces together to make something. That's something from something creation. Pieces already exist. And this, in turn, takes us back to the word Hakhel. Okay. I now want to look at two verses from the Sefer Yetzirah, which describe an ancient method of Jewish meditation. But first, let me explain some nuances of my translation from the Hebrew. There is a phrase, Sefirot Belima, in the Sefer Yetzirah that most people translate as Sefirot of nothingness, but which I translate as Declarations of Constraint, based on passages from the Bahir and from the Talmud, where the word Belima is related to the verb Balam, which means to restrain. So, from the Bahir, we read, why are they called Sefirot? Because it is written in Psalm 19:2, the heavens declare supreme, the glory of God. Okay, so supreme here, it has the same three-letter root as Sefirot, and this is being translated as declared. So the Bahir wants us to translate the Sefirot as declarations. And then in the Talmud, in Tractate Hulin 89a, this one rabbi says, the world exists only on account of the merit of him who restrains himself in strife. For it is written, this is in Job, he hangs the earth upon Belima, restraint. You often see that verse from Job translated as, he hangs the earth upon nothingness. But this rabbi argues that restraint is a better translation, given that Belima could be related to the verb balam, meaning to restrain or to constrain. Well, this all makes good sense because it is written that God created the world with 10 utterances. From the first chapter of Genesis, we know that these utterances separated one thing from another and constrained things by establishing boundaries. Thus, the Sefirot were originally the 10 declarations or utterances of God that created the world. Additionally, in the Sefer Yetzirah 1:4, chapter 1, verse 4, one encounters the word Yotzar, which is frequently translated as creator. But since this word also refers to forming and something from something creation, I've chosen to translate it as assembler to refer to that which is in our hearts that assembles the reality that we see. And now let's look at my translations of verses 1:4 and 1:8 from the Sefer Yetzirah. Okay, I translate the verse 4 in chapter 1 as 10 declarations of constraint, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. Understand with wisdom and be wise with understanding. Examine with them and explore with them, and stand each word and thing on its wellspring, and return the assembler to its base. Now there are 9 times that the phrase, and Elohim said, occurs in Genesis, and in the beginning is also reckoned as a creative utterance based upon Psalm 33:6. Thus, the Sefer Yetzirah wants to make clear that there were exactly 10 utterances. And Psalm 33:6 says, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. So in the beginning, that word of the Lord is interpreted in the Talmud, actually, by Rabbi Yohanan as a creative utterance. That's our 10th creative utterance in Genesis. Okay. Now, in modern Kabbalah, wisdom refers to what is known by the nonverbal, right? Let me start over there. In modern Kabbalah, wisdom refers to what is known by the nonverbal right brain, and understanding refers to the processing of information by the verbal left brain. And when wisdom and understanding come together, they create knowledge for us. In this verse, the Sefer Yetzirah tells us to first examine and explore things by using both halves of our brain. If we use only one half of our brain, then, as I like to say, we're just a half-wit. So use both sides of your brain. Now, To stand each word and thing on its wellspring means to turn our attention away from whatever it is we are perceiving. Instead, focus on that which is doing the perceiving, the source or wellspring of our perceptions. And likewise, returning the assembler, or the former, or God, creator if you prefer, to its base means to center your awareness on the source of awareness, rather than having your attention always running toward one object or another. Okay. And now let's look at verse 8 from chapter 1 of the Sefer Yensura. I have it up here. It says, 10 declarations of constraint. Restrain your mouth from speaking and your heart from thinking. And if your mouth runs to words or your heart to reflections, return them to their place. Thus is said, and the living beings, the Hayot, ran and returned. That is from Ezekiel 1:14. And upon this word, a covenant was cut. So, with everything I had on the previous slides, as an introduction, we now get to our meditation technique. It is very much like standard forms of mindfulness meditation, but instead of focusing on whatever perception we might have at the moment, which some versions of mindfulness meditation do, we focus, another misspelled word, focus instead on the awareness that observes the perception. Also, I like to call this method running and returning based upon the passage that this verse quotes from Ezekiel 1:14. In a nutshell, this verse says, don't talk, don't think about stuff, just center yourself. And when and if you start to talk or think about things again, then gently return your attention back to the source of awareness. This technique is both simple and difficult at the same time. Also, as you draw closer to the source of your awareness, you tend to automatically feel more oneness, since there are no perceived parts to this awareness. So all that you do is you try and center yourself, and as thoughts or other feelings or things arise, don't focus on those thoughts, but try and look back to the place where those thoughts are known, to that place where they're perceived. Let every perception lead you back to the awareness part, that place where everything is known. And as you get closer to that place, you're going to experience more oneness, because there are no parts to that unperceivable awareness. Okay, and as you perceive more oneness, you might also start to feel more love for things. Because in Hebrew, the word for one, echad, it has a numerical value of 13, and that's also the numerical value of ahava, the word for love. If you think about it, love and oneness are pretty much the same thing. When you're in love with someone, you feel at one with them. And so, likewise, when you feel oneness, you start to feel love. Okay. Now let me talk about the word hayot in this verse up here, which comes from Ezekiel 1:14. The word hayot for living beings that occurs in Ezekiel is also very interesting. It is spelled het yud vav tet. So if we break it up into two words and write it as het yud for one word, and then I'm just going to add the letter aleph here, aleph vav tet. If I do that, it's still pronounced the same way as chai and yod. Chai, oh. Okay. Then, doing it this way, it spells literally life signs or signs of life. Furthermore, the word chai for life can also be translated as running. Hence, think of the hayot as those whirlpools of thought and emotion in our brain that often draw our attention away from the center as our focus runs after this and that. Okay? Nonetheless, everything we know is perceived by the awareness that lies at the center of our perceived universe. And when we realize this, then we can use every perception to help center ourselves by focusing not on the perception, but on that which perceives the perception. And when we do this, then we can say that the running chayot have returned. Our awareness runs towards this and that, but when it all goes back into awareness to that place where it's known, that is the return part. And that's why this whole technique is, I call it running and returning. Okay, this verse up here from the Sefer Yensura, it ends with, and upon this a covenant was cut. Well, a covenant is often thought of as a contract or contractual agreement. In this case, we might think of it as the rules that govern the interaction between the perceiver and the perceived, so that we all assemble the same version of reality. Furthermore, the Zohar, in its own way, equates this awareness given as I, or the Hebrew word ani, spelled Aleph Nun Yud, with God as no thing, or ein, which is spelled Aleph Yud Nun, just a permutation of the letters that spell I. Okay. And there you have it. A somewhat mystical interpretation of the word Hakhel, a symbol, in 22 slides. And since the word ein for nothingness or no thing is also one of the appellations for both awareness and God, I'll end with these words, may the ein be with you. So, may you meditate well, may you center yourself, may you merge into oneness with this perceiver within, this assembler within, the no thing part of our existence, which we don't perceive directly, but which is involved with every perception we have. So go in peace, go in oneness, and I'll stop my slideshow at this point. I'll say shalom, peace and wholeness be with you, and I hope to see you later. So long.